Hello and welcome to the Court Jester, your favourite source of stories from the Middle Ages. I am Cleopatra, medievalist, storyteller and your host. This month we're doing the story of Tristan and Iseult, and because it's huge, we're doing it in two parts. Last time we left Tristan and Queen Iseult in the wood of Morois, living like hunted creatures and calling it freedom, because the court had made every other word dangerous. Now part two begins, and it begins where all trouble starts, with mercy. Content warnings for this episode include violence and injury, coercion and threats of punishment, sexual politics and public shaming, ableist medieval portrayals of illness and disability, and in the end, they all die. If you want a pink love story, look elsewhere. If you want the Middle Ages in all their raw glory, stay with me, get your drink, and let's go. We left the lovers in the wild wood, living a savage life which soon they came to love. They wandered in the depths of the wild wood, restless and in haste like hunted beasts. They ate but the flesh of wild animals. Their faces sank and grew white, their clothes ragged. They loved each other and they did not know that they suffered. One day, as they were wandering in these high woods that had never yet been felled or ordered, they came upon the hermitage of Ogrin. The old man, Ogrin, limped in the sunlight under a light growth of maples near his chapel. He leaned upon his crutch and cried, "Lord Tristan, hear the great oath which the Cornish men have sworn. The king has published a ban in every parish. Whosoever may seize you shall receive 100 marks of gold, and all the barons have sworn to give you up, alive or dead. Do penance. God pardons the sinner who turns to repentance. Do penance, Tristan." "And of what should I repent, Ogrin, my lord? Of what crime? You sit there in judgment, but do you know what cup it was that we drank upon the high sea?" said Tristan. "That potion inebriates us both. I would rather beg my life and live of fruits and herbs with Iseult than be king of a wild kingdom without her." "Oh, Lord Tristan, you have lost both this world and the next," said Ogrin. "Give back the queen to the man who espoused her lawfully according to the laws of Rome. He gave her to his lepers. From these lepers I myself conquered her with my own hand, and since then she is altogether mine. She cannot pass from me, or I from her." Iseult kept crying, and Ogrin insisted that Tristan should do penance. Tristan refused. Holding hands, Tristan and Iseult passed into the high grass and in the underwood. The trees hid them with their branches. They disappeared beyond the leaves. The summer passed, and winter came. The two lovers lived all hidden in the hollow of a rock, and in the frozen earth the cold crisped their couch with dead leaves. In the strength of their love, neither felt these mortal things. But when the open skies came back with springtime, they built a hut of green branches under the trees. Tristan had known since his childhood how to sing the song of birds in the woods, and at his fancy he would mimic the thrush, the blackbird, the nightingale, and all winged things, and sometimes in reply many other birds would come to the branches of his hut and sing their song full-throated in the new light. The lovers had ceased to wander, for none of the barons ran the risk of their pursuit. It was a summer day when Tristan took his sword and bow and went hunting. He came back broken by the heat and lied down to sleep with his sword on his side, and Iseult lay next to him, the sword between them. A woodsman found them sleeping like this and recognized them, and ran back to Tintagel to tell the king, "I saw the queen and Tristan in a hut in the woods. They slept side by side. Come and take your vengeance." "Speak to no one about this," said the king, "but take me there." So the man did, and the king was set on vengeance. He came along into the hut, sword bare, and watched them as they lay, but he saw that they were apart, and he wondered, because between them was the naked blade. Then he said to himself, "My God, I may not kill them, for all the time they have lived together in this wood, these two lovers, yet here is a sword here between them, and throughout Christendom men know that sign. It means that they do not live as lovers. Therefore I will not slay, for that would be treason and wrong, but make sure that when they wake they'll know that I found them here, asleep, and spared them and that God had pity on them both. And still the sunbeam fell upon the white face of Iseult, and the king took his ermine gloves off and put them against the crevice where it shone from. Then in her sleep a vision came. She seemed to be in a great wood, and 2 lions near her fought for her. And she gave a cry and woke, and the gloves fell upon her breast. And at the cry Tristan woke, and made to seize his sword, and saw by the golden hilt that it was the king's. And the queen saw on her finger the king's ring, and she cried, "Oh, my lord, the king has found us here." And Tristan said, "He has taken my sword. He was alone, but he will return, and he will burn us before all his people. Let us fly." So they fled towards Wales. And 3 days later Tristan was hunting again. He followed a wounded deer far out the wood and was caught by nightfall, so he started thinking during the night. It was not fear that moved the king, he thought. He had my sword, and I was sleeping, and had he wished to slay, why did he leave me his own blade? Oh, my father, I know you now. There was pardon in your heart, and tenderness and pity. Yet how was it? Who could forgive this matter without shame? It was not pardon, it was understanding. He has been shown that God is on our side. And I think he remembered the boy who long ago harped at his feet, and my land of Lyonesse which I left for him, and the Morholt spear and blood shed in his honour. He remembered how I made no avowal, but claimed a trial at arms, and the high nature of his heart has made him understand what men around him cannot. Never can he know of the spell, yet he doubts and hopes and knows I have told no lie, and would have me prove my cause. Oh, imagine if I could win at arms by God's aid for him, and to enter his peace and to put on mail for him again. But then he must take her back, and I must yield her. It would have been much better had he killed me in my sleep, for till now I was hunted, and I could hate and forget. He had thrown Iseult to the lepers. She was no more his but mine, and now, by his compassion, he has awakened my heart and regained the queen. For queen she was at his side, but in this wood she lives a slave, and I waste her youth, and her rooms used to be hung with silk, and now she lives in the savage place, and a hut for her splendid house, and I am the cause she treads this dreaded road. So now I cry to God the Lord, who is King of the world, and beg him to give me strength to yield back Iseult to King Mark, for she is indeed his wife, wed according to the laws of Rome, before all the barony of his land. And as he thought thus, he leaned upon his bow and thought all night, and considered his sorrow. Within the hollow of thorns that was their resting place, Iseult the fair awaited for his return. The golden ring that King Mark had slipped on her finger glistened in the moonlight, and she thought, the man that put on this ring is not the man who threw me to his lepers in his wrath. He is rather that compassionate Lord who from the day I touched his shore received me and protected me, and he loved Tristan once. But I came, and I see what I have done. He should have lived in King's palace. He should have ridden through with kings and barons' lands, finding adventure, but through me he has forgotten everything, his knighthood, his king, and he is hunted and exiled from the court, living a random life. Just then she heard the feet of Tristan coming back. She came to meet him to relieve him of his arms, and she took his bow and arrows, and she unbuckled his sword, and he said, "This is the king's sword. It should have slain the both of us, but he spared us." She took the sword and kissed the hilt of gold, and Tristan saw her weeping. "Iseult," he said, "if I could make my peace with the king, if he would allow me to prove in combat that neither by act nor word have I loved you with a wrongful love, any knight in the land that would accuse me would find me armed in the ring. Then if the king would keep you and drive me out, I'd cross to the lowlands or go to Brittany, but wherever I went, and always, queen, I should be yours. I wouldn't have said anything if it weren't for the wretchedness you bear so long, for my sake, in this desert land." "Tristan," she said, "there is the hermit Ogrin. Let's return to him and cry mercy for the King of Heaven." All night long they went. For the last time they crossed the woods of their love, and they did not speak a word. By morning they came to the hermitage where Ogrin read at the threshold, and seeing them, he called them tenderly. "Friends," he cried, "see how love drives you still to feather wretchedness. Will you not do penance at last for your madness?" "Lord Ogrin," said Tristan, help us to offer peace to the king, and I will yield him the queen, and I will myself go far away into Brittany or the lowlands, and if some day the king suffers me, I will return and serve as I should." And at the hermit's feet Iseult said in her turn, "Nor will I live like this any longer, though I will not say one word of penance for my love, which is there and remains forever, yet from now on I will be separate from him." Then the hermit wept and praised God, and took ink and wrote a little letter offering the king what Tristan said. That night Tristan took the road. Once more he saw the marble well and the tall pine tree, and came beneath the window where the king slept, and called him gently. And Mark awoke and whispered, "Who are you that calls me in the night at such an hour?" "Lord, I'm Tristan. I bring you a message, and I lay it here." "For God's sake, wait," asked the king. But Tristan had fled back to the hermitage, where Iseult was weeping silently. Mark had his chaplain read the letter out loud for all his barons to hear. "My lord, it is Tristan that first sends love and homage to the king and all his barony, and he adds, 'O king, when I slew the dragon and conquered the king of Ireland's daughter, it was to me they gave her, and I yielded her to you. Yet hardly had you wed her when felons made you accept their lies, and in your anger, fair uncle, my lord, you would have had us burned without trial, but God took compassion on us. We prayed to him, and he saved the queen as justice was, and me as well. Though I leapt from a high rock, I was saved by the power of God, and since then, what have I done that is blameworthy? The queen was thrown to the lepers. I came to her help and took her away. Could I have done less for a woman who all but died innocent through me? I fled through the woods, nor could I have come back to give her to you, because we were wanted and would be captured on sight. But now, as then, I am ready, my lord, to take in arms against these accusers, that I never loved the queen dishonourably, and neither did she love me in that way. Allow me trial by combat, and if I cannot prove myself, burn me before your men. But if I win, and you take back Iseult, no baron will serve you as I will. And if you would not have me, I will offer myself to the king of Galway, or the king of Lowlands, and you will never hear from me again. Take counsel, king, for if you do not agree, I will take back Iseult to Ireland, and she shall be queen in her own land." When the barons of Cornwall heard how Tristan offered battle, they said to the king, "Sire, take back the queen. Those who accused her were madmen, but as for Tristan, let him go to Galway or to Lowland. Ask him to bring back the queen." Then the king called clearly 3 times, "Will any man rise in accusation against Tristan?" And as none replied, he said to his chaplain, "Write me a letter quickly. Iseult has suffered enough in her youth." The letter reached Tristan towards midnight, and he bore it back to the hermitage. He had 3 days, the king wrote, to bring back Iseult, and he is free to go to Galway or to the Lowlands, but not in Tagil. "I must lose you," Tristan said to Iseult. "I can't have you suffer for my sake any longer, but as we part I promise you that from whatever unknown land I reach, I will send some messenger, and he will bring back word for you, and they will come at your call from very far away." Iseult said with a sigh, "Tristan, leave me your dog, and every time I see him I will remember you and will be less sad. And here, take my jasper ring. Take it for the love of me, and put it on your finger. Then, if anyone comes saying he is from you, I will not trust him until he shows me this ring. But once I've seen it, there's no power or royal ban that can prevent me from doing what you bid, wisdom or folly." And they kissed. The hermit spent whatever little money he had to dress the queen as befitting her station, and on the day she was to meet the king, A crowd had gathered to see her. Tristan and Iseult came out at the forest's edge. Their horses went abreast, and he drew her towards him. "Tristan," she said, "hear my last prayer. You will leave this land, but wait a few days. Hide until you know how the king may treat me, for I'm afraid if he abuses me, I will send word." Tristan agreed as the king was approaching. Holding Iseult's palfrey, he bowed to the king and said, "O king, I yield you here Iseult the fair, and I summon you before the men of your land to allow me to defend myself in your court, for I have had no judgment. Let me have trial at arms, and if I am defeated, burn me, but if I win, keep me by you, or if you will not, I will be off to a country far away." But no one took up Tristan's wager, and the king, taking Iseult's palfrey by the bridle, went back to his councillors. "King," they said, "that the queen was slandered we admit. But if she and Tristan re-enter your court together, rumour will revive again. Rather let Tristan go apart a while. You can call him back whenever you want." And so Mark did, and ordered Tristan to go off without delay. So Tristan turned his reins and went down towards the sea. Iseult followed him with her eyes until she could not see him any more. And to the noise of bells, and over paving strewn with branches, the king and his counts and princes made her escort, and the gates of the palace were thrown open, and the rich and poor might enter and eat and drink at will. And Mark freed 100 of his slaves, and armed a score of squires that day with hauberk and with sword. But Tristan didn't leave, because the queen had counselled him. Now, if you thought this was the end of Iseult's troubles, think again. Because as soon as Tristan left the country, the barons went back into being their usual nasty selves. So one day during a hunt, they went to the king and told him that it was wrong to forgive the queen without a trial. "Tell her to swear on the relics and go through the trial of hot iron," they said, "so that nobody doubts her." But Mark answered, "God strike you, my lords, how you haunt my shame! For you I have exiled my nephew, and now you would have me drive the queen to Ireland too? Did not Tristan offer you battle in this matter? Where were your lances and your shields then? Out of my land and out of my peace, all of you." The barons left, and the king returned to Tintagel. The queen received him and took his sword, and saw such wrath in his face that she knew something was wrong. She thought at once that he must have found Tristan, and fell on the king's feet. "Sire, I'm afraid, for I have seen your anger," she said. "Yes, I was angered at the hunt." "My lord, should one take so deeply the mischances of a game?" said the queen. "No, it was the barons, and I have driven them out of my land." "Sire, what did they say?" "Do I not have the right to know? I am alone in a foreign land, and I have no one else to defend me," said the queen. "They would have you go through the ordeal of Ireland, saying that God was a true judge, and that since you are innocent, you should seek to clear your name," King Mark said. "But leave it. I tell you, I have driven them away." She trembled, but looking straight at the king, she said, "Call them back. Call them back, sire. I will clear myself by oath. But I will not swear before your barons alone, because soon they'll think of something else. Send for King Arthur and 100 of his knights to stand in judgment, so that there's no baron that can dispute it afterwards." But as the heralds rode to King Arthur's court, Iseult sent to Tristan secretly her squire, and he told him everything, the ordeal, the place, and the time. And he added, "My lord, the queen asks that you come dressed as a pilgrim, so that none may know you, unarmed, so that none may challenge you, and you must stand where Arthur and his 100 knights will stand, for my lady fears the judgment, but she trusts in God." "Go back to the queen," said Tristan, "and tell her I will do her bidding." On the appointed day, King Mark and Iseult and the barons of Cornwall gathered by the river, and the knights of King Arthur and all their host were arrayed beyond. And just before them, sitting at the shore, was a poor pilgrim, wrapped in a cloak and hood, who held his wooden platter and begged alms. The queen was arriving on a boat. And she said to the knights, "My lords, how shall I land without befouling my clothes in the river mud? Fetch me a ferryman." One of the knights hailed the pilgrim and said, "You carry the queen to the shore, pilgrim." But as he took the queen to his arms, she whispered to him, "Tristan." And then she whispered to him lower still, "Stumble upon the sand." And as he touched shore, he stumbled, holding the queen in his arms, and the squires and boatmen with their oars and their boat hooks drove the poor pilgrim away. But the queen said, "Let him be. Some great journey must have weakened him," and she threw him a little clasp of gold. Before the tent of King Arthur a rich cloth was spread, and the holy relics were set on it, taken out of their shrines. And round the holy relics stood a guard, more than a guard, for it was Lord Gawain, and also Girflet, and Kay the seneschal that kept ward over them. The queen, having prayed to God, took off her jewels from her neck and hands, and gave them to the beggars around. She took off her purple mantle, and her overdress, and her shoes with their precious stones, and gave them to the poor that loved her. She kept upon her only the sleeveless tunic, and then, with arms and feet quite bare, she came between the two kings, and all around the barons watched her in silence. And, trembling a little, she stretched her right hand towards the relics and said, "My kings, my lords, and all of you that are my warrantors, by these holy things and all the holy things on earth I swear that no man has held me in his arms saving King Mark my lord, and that poor pilgrim. King Mark, will that oath stand?" "Yes, queen," he said, "and God see to it." "Amen," said Iseult, and then she went near the brazier, pale and stumbling, and all were silent. The iron was red, but she thrust her bare arms among the coals and seized it, and bearing it, took 9 steps. Then, as she cast it out from her, she stretched her arms out in a cross, with her palms of her wide open, and all men saw them fresh and clean and cold. Seeing that great sight, the kings and the barons and the people stood for a moment silent. Then they stirred together and praised God loudly all around. Only after all this was done did Tristan leave the land. 3 days yet he tarried, because he could not drag himself away from that earth, but on the 4th day he knew the hour had come. And he went into Wales, where he was welcomed nobly as a God-sent guest, but neither adventure nor feast could soothe what Tristan suffered. One day, as he was sitting by the young duke's side, he sighed so deeply that the duke felt the need to soothe him. So the duke ordered his people to bring his fairy dog that was a gift from the Duke of Avalon. The dog bore at its neck, hung to a little chain of gold, a little bell, and that tinkled so happily that as Tristan heard it he was soothed, and his anguish melted away, and he forgot all that he had suffered for the queen, for such was the power of that little bell, that whosoever heard it lost all pain. And as Tristan stroked the little fairy thing, the dog that took away his sorrow, he saw how delicate it was and how fine, and he thought how good a gift it would make for the queen. But he dared not ask it outright, because he knew that the duke loved his dog before everything in the world, and would yield it to no prayers, nor to wealth, nor to wile. So he had to be smart. "Lord," he asked casually, "what would you give to the man who would rid your land of the hairy giant Urgan that has been tormenting you?" "Oh, I'd give them anything," said the duke, "but none will dare." So obviously Tristan offered to go, and he did, and he killed the giant and brought back his head, and for payment he asked the puppy, which he got, but the king was really sad to see it go. He sent the puppy to the Queen Iseult, and she managed to convince everyone that it was actually a gift from her mother, who sent it from Ireland. Everywhere she went she carried it, and it was working wonders on her aching heart. But when she discovered what the fairy bell did, and that its magic took away her pain, she threw it off the window. If Tristan was suffering, so would she. Tristan fled his sorrow through seas and islands and many lands, until at last he came back to his land of Lyonesse. from Lyonesse to the lowlands, from the lowlands on to the Germanies, through the Germanies and into Spain. And many lords he served, and many deeds he did, but for 2 years no news came to him out of Cornwall. Then he thought that Iseult had forgotten. Eventually he found himself into the land of Brittany. They rode through a wasted plain of ruined walls and empty hamlets, and burned fields everywhere, and the earth deserted of men. And Tristan thought, I'm tired, and my deeds profit me nothing. My lady is far off, and I'll never see her again. Why else? Has she made no sign for 2 years? Why has she sent no messengers to find me as I wandered? But in Tintagel, Mark honours her, and she gives him joy, and that little fairy bell might probably have done a very good work, for she remembers little of me as I wander from place to place. Maybe soon I too will forget. 3 days passed, and on the 3rd day at noon, Tristan came near a hill where an old chantry and a hermitage stood. And Tristan asked, what was that wasteland? And the hermit answered, Lord, it is Breton land, which is held by Duke Hod, and once it was rich in pasture and ploughland, but Count Riol has wasted it. This Count Riol was the Duke's vassal, and the Duke has a daughter, fair among all kings' daughters, and Count Riol would have her taken to wife, but her father refused, and Count Riol would have carried her away by force. Many men have died for this. And Tristan asked, can the Duke wage his war? Hardly, my lord, came the answer. Yet this last keep holds out still, for the walls are strong, and strong is the heart of the Duke's son, Caerden, a very good knight and bold. But the enemy surrounds them on every side and starves them. They hold their castle with great effort. So Tristan asked, how far is this keep? Sir, said the hermit, it's but 2 miles further down this way. So Tristan thanked him and rode hard to that keep, to Carhaix. And as he halted beneath the fast high walls, he saw a little company of men behind the battlements, and he asked for the Duke and his son Caerden. He was in residence, and Tristan called up to him and said, I am Tristan, king of Lyonesse, and Mark of Cornwall is my uncle. I have heard that your vassals do you wrong, and I have come to offer you my arms. Alas, Lord Tristan, go your way, they said from above the castle. May God reward you, but we have no more food. No wheat, no meat, no stores, only lentils and oats. But Tristan said, for 2 years I lived in the forest, eating nothing but roots and herbs, yet I found it a good life, so open your door. So they welcomed him with honour. And Caerden showed him the wall and the dungeon and the keep with all their devices and the battlements, and from there he showed him the plain where far away gleamed the tents of Duke Riol. And then they went down the castle to meet his mother and his sister. So they came to the woman's room, where the mother and the daughter sat together weaving, and they were weaving gold upon English cloth and singing a weaving song. Tristan bowed to them, and Caerden, showing the work his mother did, said, See how my sister's hands turn thread of gold upon this cloth. It is right, then, that everyone calls her Iseult of the white hands. The name alone was enough for Tristan to look at her more gently. And on the morrow, Tristan, Caerden, and 12 young knights left the castle and rode to a pine wood near the enemy's tents. They set an ambush and captured a wagon of Count Riol's food, and from that day they started a war of ruse and escapade, carrying off tents and convoys and killing off men, and they never came back without some booty. Tristan and Caerden began to be brothers in arms and kept faith and camaraderie, and as they came back from these rides, talking chivalry together, often did Caerden praise to his comrade his sister, Iseult of the white hands, for her simplicity and her beauty. One day, as the dawn broke, a sentinel ran from the tower through the halls, crying, Lords, you have slept too long. Rise, for an assault is on. Everyone armed and ran to the walls and saw helmets shining on the plain and pennons streaming crimson like flames, and all the host of Count Riol in his array. Then the Duke and Caerden deployed their horsemen before the gates. They spurred and charged and put their lances down together, and the arrows fell on them like April rain. Tristan had armed himself among the last. He laced his shoes of steel and put on his mail, and his spurs of gold, his hauberk and his helm, and he mounted, and he charged. He saw the Duke Riol charging to his friend, and rode to intercept him, and so they met, Tristan and Duke Riol. At the shock, Tristan's lance shivered, but Riol's lance struck Tristan's horse, just where the breastpiece runs, and laid it on the field. Tristan stood up, drew his sword, and said, "Coward! Here is death ready for the man that strikes the horse before the rider." But Riol charged him. As he passed, Tristan let fall his sword so heavily upon his helm that he carried away the crest and the nasal, but the sword slipped on the mailed shoulder and glanced on the horse and killed it, so that, by force, Duke Riol must slip the stirrup and lean and feel the ground. Then Riol was too on his feet, and they both fought hard in their broken mail until Tristan struck Riol just where the helmet buckles. Riol fell on his hands and knees and begged for his life, and Tristan took his sword. He promised to swear homage again and to restore what he had wasted, and by his order the battle ceased, and his host went off. When the victors returned, Caerdan said to his father, "Sire, you should keep Tristan. There's no better knight, and your land needs his courage." So the Duke offered him, in gratitude, the hand of his daughter in marriage. Iseult of the White Hands was to become his wife. Tristan accepted, and before all, at the gate of the minster, Tristan wed Iseult of the White Hands, according to the church's law. But that same night, as Tristan's valets undressed him and were pulling off his sleeve, a ring of jasper fell off, the ring of Iseult the Fair. It sounded on the stones, and Tristan stared, and in his heart he knew he had made a mistake. How could he think she had forgotten him when he just went and married another woman? And he felt bad for his new wife, who was beautiful and lovely, and he was already betraying her. Iseult of the White Hands heard him sigh, and asked, "Dear lord, have I hurt you in anything? Will you not speak a single word to me?" But Tristan answered, "Do not be angry with me. For once in another land I fought a foul dragon and was near my death, and I thought of the Mother of God and made a vow to her that, should I ever wed, I would spend the first holy nights of my wedding in prayer and in silence." "Why," said Iseult, "that was a good vow." And Tristan stayed up through the night. Within her room at Tintagel, Iseult the Fair sighed for the sake of Tristan, her desire, for whom for 2 years she had had no word. She was playing the harp and singing a sad song when one of the barons who sent away Tristan entered. With more than a little pleasure, he gave the news to the queen. "Lady Iseult, Tristan is lost to you. He has wed in a far land with great pomp Iseult of the White Hands, the king of Brittany's daughter." Iseult bowed her head and broke into tears. Far from her, Tristan languished. He decided that he must see her again, because away from her he was dying, and if he was to die, he would die finding her. So he left his home secretly, telling no man. He went in rags, for no one marks the beggar on the high road, till he came to the shore of the sea. He found in a haven a great ship, ready. The sail was up, and the anchor chain shot short at the bow. "God save you, my lords," he said. "To what land are you sailing now?" "To Tintagel," they said. "Oh, my lords, take me with you." And he went aboard, and a fair wind filled the sail, and the boat ran 5 days and nights for Cornwall, till on the 6th day they dropped anchor in Tintagel haven. The castle stood above, fenced all around. Tristan went ashore and sat upon the beach, and the man told him that Mark was there, and he had just held his court. "But where," asked he, "is Iseult the queen and her fair maid Brangienne?" "In Tintagel," said the other, "and I saw them lately. The queen was sad, but she is always sad." At hearing her name, Tristan suffered. He knew there was no way to see her, for Mark would kill him, and he thought, "Let him, and let me die for her, since every day I die. But you, Iseult, even if you knew me here, would you not drive me out?" And he thought, "I will try cunning, and I will seem mad, but with great wisdom, and many shall think me a fool." So he switched clothes with a fisherman, and shaved off his wonderful hair, and shaved a cross pattern on his head. And he rubbed his face with magic herbs from his own country, changing the colour of his skin, so that no one could recognize him. And he made himself a club from a young tree, and hung it to his neck, and went barefoot towards the castle. The porter was sure he had to do with a fool, and said, "Good morrow, fool, where have you been this long while?" And he answered, "At the abbot of Saint-Michel. There was a wedding. The abbot was wedding an abbess, and from the Alps to Mont Saint-Michel they came, the priests and the abbots and the monks and the regulars, dancing on the green with croziers and with staves under the high tree's shade. But I left them to come hither, for I serve at the king's board today." Then the porter said, "Come in. Obviously, you are the son of Harry Urgan, and you're like your father." Obviously. All fools look the same. And as he was in the court, everyone started crying, "The fool, the fool!" proving that indeed all fools look the same. But he made play with them, though they cast stones and struck him as they laughed. And in the midst of laughter and their cries, as the rout followed him, he came to the hall, where at the queen's side King Mark sat under his canopy. And as he neared the door with his club at his neck, the king said, "He's a merry fellow. Let him in." And they brought him in. And the king said, "Friend, welcome. What seek you here?" "Iseult," said Tristan, "whom I love so well. I bring my sister with me, Brunhild the beautiful. Come, take her. You are tired of the queen, are you not? Take my sister, and give me Iseult, and I will hold her and serve you for her love." The king said, laughing, "Fool, if I gave you the queen, where would you take her, pray?" "Oh, very high," he said, "between the clouds and the heaven, into a far chamber glazed. The beams of the sun shine through it, yet the winds do not trouble it at all. There I'd bear the queen into the crystal chamber of mine, all full of roses and the morning sun." The king and his barons laughed and said, "He is a good fool, at no loss for words." But the fool, as he sat, he gazed at Iseult most fixedly. "Friend," said King Mark, "what warrant have you that the queen would heed so foul a fool as you?" "O sire," he answered gravely, "many deeds I have done for her, and my madness is from her alone." "What is your name?" they said, and laughed. "Tristan," said he, "that loved the queen so well, and still till death will love her." The queen was furious and weak at once. "Get out, you evil fool," she ordered. But the fool, marking her anger, went on. "Queen Iseult, do you remember the day when, poisoned by Morhold's spear, I took my harp to sea and fell upon your shore? You healed me then with strange drugs. Have you no memory, queen?" But Iseult answered, "Out, fool, out! Your folly and you have crossed the bounds." But the fool, still playing, pushed the barons out, crying, "Out, madman, out! Leave me to speak with Iseult, since I come here for the love of her." And as the king laughed, Iseult blushed and said, "King, send him away." But he kept laughing and crying, "Queen, do you remember the dragon I slew in your land? I hid his tongue in my house, and I got burned of its venom, and I fell by the roadside. What a night I was then! And it was you that saved me." "Silence!" she cried. "You wrong all knighthood by your words. Cursed be the sea that brought you here." "Queen Iseult," he still said, "do you remember of your haste when you would have slain me with my own sword, and of the hair of gold, and of how I stood up to the seneschal?" "Silence!" she said. "You drunkard, you were drunk last night, and you dreamt of all these dreams." He laughed. "Drunk, but still so am I," he said, "but of such a draught that never can the influence fade. Queen Iseult, do you remember of that hot and open day on the high seas? We were thirsty, and we drank together from the same cup, and since that day I have been drunk with an awful wine." When the queen heard these words, which she alone could understand, she rose and tried to go. But the king held her by her ermine cloak, and she sat down again until the king had his fill of the fool and went to hunt. And Iseult said to him, "Sire, I'm weak and sad. Let me rest in my rooms. I'm tired of all this." And she went to her room and sat upon her bed and mourned. "Why was I ever born, Brangienne, dear sister? Life is so hard to me that death would be better. There is a fool out there, shaven, crisscross, and he's a warlock, for he knows every part of myself and my whole life. He knows what only you and I and Tristan know." Then Brangienne said, "It may be Tristan." "But no," said the queen. "He was the first of knights. This fool is foul and ugly. Curse his hour and the shape that brought him here." "My lady," Brangienne said, "calm down. You curse too much these days. Maybe he comes from Tristan?" "I cannot tell. I know him not. But go find him, friend, and see if you know him." So Brangienne went to the hall where the fool sat, alone. Tristan knew her, and said, "Brangienne, dear Brangienne, have pity on me." "Foul fool," she answered, "what devil taught you my name?" "Lady," he said, "I have known it for a very long time, by my head that once was fair. If I am mad, the blame is yours, for it was your duty to watch over the wine we drank on the high seas. The cup was silver, and I held it to Iseult, and she drank. Do you remember, lady?" "Oh no," she said. He followed her, and saw Iseult. He stretched out his arms, but in her shame she drew back, and he got more upset. "I have lived too long," he said, "for I have seen the day that Iseult will think nothing of me." How hard love dies. Iseult, a welling water that floods and runs large, is a mighty thing. On the day that it fails, it's nothing. So is a love that turns. But she said, "I look at you, and I doubt and I tremble, and I know you're not him." "I am him, queen. I'm him indeed. Do you remember that ring that I took in kisses and tears on the day we parted? I've kept that jasper ring and asked for its counsel." So Iseult recognized him, and her eyes darkened, and she passed out. But when the light returned, she was held by him, who kissed her eyes and her face. 3 days they stayed in her rooms. But on the third, the maids betrayed them, and suspicion rose in the household. That night, as he was holding her, he said, "I must go, for they're wandering. I must fly, and perhaps I shall never see you again. My death is near, and far from you, my death will come of desire." "If that is so," she said, "fold your arms around me and strain me so hard that our hearts may break together and our souls feel free at last. Take me to that happy place of which you told me long ago, the fields where none return from, but where great singers sing their songs forever. Take me there now." "I will take you to the happy place of the living, queen. The time is near. We have drunk all joy and sorrow. When it is finished, if I call you, will you come?" "I will come," she said. As he went out, still playing the fool, he cried, "Peace, gentlemen. I will not stay. My lady sends me to prepare that shining house I promised her, of crystal and of roses." And as they cursed him, the fool went leaping on his way. When he came back to Brittany, Tristan fell into an ambush and was wounded by a poisoned spear, and many doctors came, but none could cure him. And Tristan weakened and paled, and he lost so much weight his bones showed. Then he knew that his life was ending, and he wanted to seek Iseult, but he knew that he could not make the trip, and how could she come to him? And sad and suffering the poison, he awaited death. He called Cardan to tell him of his pain, for he was now his best friend, and as he would have no one in the room save Cardan, Iseult of the White Hands, his wife, began to wonder. She was afraid and wished to hear, and she listened at the wall by Tristan's bed. Inside the room, Tristan had gathered up his strength and had half risen, leaning against the wall, and Cardan wept beside him. They wept their good friendship, broken so soon. Then Tristan told Cardan of his love for Queen Iseult and for the sorrow of his life. "Fair friend and gentle," said Tristan, I am in a foreign land, where I have neither friend nor cousin save you, and you alone in this place has given me any kind of comfort. My life is going, and I wish to see her once more. I know that she will come to me. Cardan, my brother-in-arms, I beg it of our friendship. Try this thing for me. And Cardan said yes, despite the fact that Tristan was married to his sister, and he just confessed his love to another. And Tristan said, thank you. Take this ring. It is a sign between her and me, and when you come to her land, pass for a merchant, and show her silk, but make sure that she sees the ring, for then she will find some way to speak to you in secret. Then tell her that she alone can bring me comfort. Tell her that if she does not come, I'll die. Tell her to remember our past time and our great sorrows, and the joy that there was in our love. And tell her to remember the potion we drank together on the high seas, for we drank our death together. Tell her to remember the oath I swore, to serve a single love, for I have kept that oath. Behind that wall, Iseult of the White Hands heard all these things. And Tristan continued, hasten, my friend, and come back quickly, or you will not see me again. And tell your sister nothing, or tell her that you seek some doctor. Take my ship and 2 sails with you, 1 white, 1 black, and as you return, if you bring Iseult, hoist the white sail. But if you bring her not, put the black. Now God guide you and bring you back safe. With a fast, fair wind, Cardan sailed. They bore rich merchandise with them, dyed silks of rare colours, enamel of Touraine and wines of Poitou. 8 days and nights they ran full sail to Cornwall. Now a woman's wrath is a fearful thing, and all men fear it. For according to her love, so will her vengeance be. And their love and their hate come quickly, but their hate lives longer. And they will make play with love, but not with hate. So Iseult of the White Hands, who had heard every word and who had so loved Tristan, waited for her vengeance upon what she loved most in the world. But she hid it all, and when the doors were open again, she came to Tristan's bed and served him with food as a lover should, and spoke to him gently and kissed him on the lips and asked him if Cardan would soon return with one to cure him. But all day long she thought upon her vengeance. And Cardan sailed and sailed till he dropped anchor in the haven of Tintagel. He landed and begged the king for his peace and safeguard, so that he might traffic in his land, and the king granted it. Then Cardan offered the queen a buckle of fine gold. Queen, he said, this gold is good. And then taking from his finger Tristan's ring, he put it side by side. This brooch is good, he said, but this ring also has some worth, I think. Iseult's heart trembled and her colour changed, and she drew Cardan apart near a window, as if to see the bargain better. And then he said, Lady, Tristan is wounded by a poisoned spear and is about to die. He sends you word that you alone can bring him comfort, and recalls to you the great sorrows that you bore together. Keep you the ring, it is yours. But she answered immediately, I'll come with you. And in the morning they sailed. Back at Carhaix, Tristan lay and longed for Iseult's coming. Nothing filled him any more, and he lived his days waiting. He had himself carried to the cliff that overlooks the sea, and all day he gazed off over the water. Hear now a tale most sad and pitiful to all who love. She was near. Already the cliff showed far away, and the ship ran heartily when a storm wind rose suddenly and grew, and struck the sail and turned the ship all round. The wind raged, and big seas ran, and the air grew thick with darkness, and the ocean itself turned dark, and the rain drove in gusts. Iseult cried out, God does not want me to live to see him. God wants me drowning in this sea. O Tristan, my love, I cannot come to you, for God so wills it, and that is the core of my grief. It took 5 days for the storm to die down. Cardan hoisted the sail, the white one, right up to the mast with great joy, so that Tristan might see it. They saw the shore from far off, but the storm had carried them away and they couldn't land. On the 3rd night, Iseult dreamt this dream, that she held in her lap a boar's head which befouled her skirt with blood, and then she knew that she would never see him alive. Tristan was now too weak to keep his watch from the cliff, and for many long days within walls far from the shore he had mourned because Iseult did not come. At last the wind dropped and the white sails showed. It was then that Iseult of the White Hands took her vengeance. She came to where Tristan lay and said, "Friend, Cerdon is here. I have seen his ship upon the sea. May he bring something to heal you?" "Tell me," Tristan asked, "what is the sail?" "Black." And Tristan turned to the wall and said, "Then I cannot keep this life of mine any longer." He said Iseult's name 3 times and died. Throughout the house, the knights and the comrades of Tristan wept out loud, and they took him from his bed and laid him out on a rich cloth, and they covered his body with a shroud. But at the sea, the wind had risen. It struck the sail and drove the ship to shore, and Iseult the Fair set foot upon the land. She heard loud mourning in the streets and the tolling of bells in the chapel towers, and she asked, "What's happening, and what's the meaning of their tears?" An old man said to her, "Lady, we suffer great grief. Tristan, that was so loyal and so right, is dead. He was open to the poor, he ministered to the suffering. It is a great misfortune for this land." Iseult went up to the palace, following the way, her cloak random and wild behind her. The Bretons marvelled as she went, nor had they ever seen a woman of such beauty, and they asked, "Who is she, and where does she come from?" Near Tristan, Iseult of the White Hands crouched, maddened at the evil she had done, and calling and lamenting over the dead man. The other Iseult came in and said to her, "Lady, rise and let me come by him. I have more right to mourn him than you, believe me. I loved him more." She moved the body a little and lay down by the dead Tristan. She kissed his mouth and his face and clasped him closely, and so gave up her soul and died beside him of her grief. When King Mark heard of the death of these lovers, he crossed the sea and came into Brittany, and he had 2 coffins made for Tristan and Iseult, one of halcedony for her and one of beryl for him. And he took their beloved bodies away with him upon his ship to Tintagel. And by a chantry to the left and right of the apse he had their tombs built. But in one night there sprung from the tomb of Tristan a green and leafy briar. Strong in its branches and in the scent of its flowers, it climbed the chantry and fell to root again by Iseult's tomb. Thrice did the peasants cut it down, but thrice it grew again and flowered just as strong. They told the marvel to King Mark, and he forbade them to cut the briar any longer. The good singers of all time, Berulle and Thomas of Bilt, Gilbert and Gottfried, told this tale for lovers and none other, and by my voice they beg you for your prayers. They greet those who are cast down and those who love, those troubled and those filled with desire. May all find strength despite loss and pain and all the bitterness of loving. And so ends the tale of Tristan and Queen Iseult, the way the old singers ended it. If it made you cry, you're not alone. The old poets tell this for lovers and none other. So let this one be for them. If you want more medieval stories for other people that are not just lovers, follow me on my socials, and if you like what I do, there's also a Patreon. Thank you for listening. Until next time.